Gene Hackman did not die of heart disease. That was the assertion made by the last doctor who examined him. A strange drug was discovered in the legendary actor's body, believed to be the cause of his unusual death, directly contradicting earlier medical reports to this day. Doctors and investigators remain unsettled by the case. They point to the odd pill bottles discarded behind the house, the suspiciously clean and orderly home, the appearance of a mysterious woman, and Hackman's final fearful whisper, "Someone is watching me." Questions linger about what doctors ultimately found in his body, and which of his words terrified the media and were later viewed as an ominous sign. On the morning of February 26th, the Santa Fe Police Department received an urgent call from Gene Hackman's neighbor. The caller reported that the lights in his house had been on all night, yet no one had seen him outside for several days. When officers arrived, they did not expect that what seemed like a routine welfare check would become one of the most puzzling cases in New Mexico, inside a damp room. Police found Gene Hackman seated upright, fully dressed, with his hand resting near his familiar cane. A short distance away, his wife, Betsy Arakawa, was found in the bathroom near an electric heater. A German Shepherd was discovered locked inside a closet, while the couple's 2 other dogs were missing from the property. A few days later, the New Mexico office of the medical investigator released preliminary findings. Mrs. Arakawa was believed to have died from complications related to a hantavirus infection, a rare illness transmitted by rodents. Hackman was not infected and was said to have died nearly a week later from heart disease. Combined with prolonged debilitation and starvation, that explanation was quickly challenged. Examining physician Dr. Child stated that hantavirus-related respiratory distress usually develops over several days, making it highly unusual for an otherwise healthy 65-year-old woman to suddenly become critically ill without warning. This conflicted with evidence showing that Mrs. Arakawa had spoken with a clinic on February 12th and had been seen shopping for medicine, pet food, and groceries on February 11th. While appearing completely normal, doctors also found no traces of food in Hackman's stomach, while elevated acetone levels indicated prolonged fasting. An investigative source later told the Santa Fe Reporter that the home was unnervingly tidy, with no dishes, food, or signs of recent daily activity, as if someone had carefully cleaned the house before leaving. This detail pushed the investigation in a new direction. Did Hackman truly understand what had happened to his wife? And how could someone in his condition have survived alone for nearly a week before his death? The deeper investigators looked, the stronger the sense became that a third persona, shadowy presence had entered the house during those final days and then disappeared without a trace. Delivery driver reported seeing a brown-haired woman, about 50 years old, open the gate for a food truck on the morning of February 14th. "I thought it was his wife at the time," he later said. "But after seeing her photo, I'm sure it wasn't Mrs. Betsy." No video footage existed to confirm his account, as all the security cameras had reportedly been manually turned off since February 11th. When questioned further, the driver added that he saw the woman only once, taking a trash bag to the truck. When he asked if she was Mrs. Hackman, she simply nodded. When Betsy died, Hackman should have contacted emergency services, yet no call was ever made. The house was unusually clean, the windows all shut, and there were no signs of panic or distress. What unsettled investigators most was that this mysterious woman appeared precisely during that critical period. Medical records showed that Hackman suffered from advanced Alzheimer's disease. With severe loss of short-term memory, he often forgot to eat, forgot familiar routes, forgot the faces of neighbors, at times could not even recognize those around him. It was considered highly likely that he mistook this woman for his wife. Still, one small detail gave investigators pause. In a trash bin behind the house, they found 2 empty prescription bottles typically prescribed to elderly patients. Strangely, there were no fingerprints on the caps. According to an internal source, doctors conducted specialized tests that produced unexpected results. They detected traces of an unusual active ingredient in Hackman's body, one known to suppress hunger and cause fatigue, especially when used continuously over several days. A geriatric specialist explained that prolonged use could make a person unaware of their declining condition. causing the body to weaken rapidly. In other words, Hackman may have been driven into extreme exhaustion during his final days. Witnesses noted that Hackman visibly deteriorated over the last 5 to 6 days of his life. He ate and drank very little and appeared to lose all sense of time. Whether the woman played a direct role in this chain of events remains unclear. Some questioned whether she intended to help, or whether her actions unintentionally led to something irreversible. No clear motive was ever established. Soon afterward, Santa Fe police identified a woman named Gloria M., a housekeeper Betsy had once employed. When officers went to her listed address, the home was empty. Neighbors said Gloria had left in early March, just days after the incident became public. Departing with luggage and a gray SUV, investigators found no evidence she had flown out of state, no travel records, no bank activity, and no usable location data. However, in Betsy Arakawa's files, they uncovered an old handwritten note hidden inside an accounting ledger. Gloria, 8 a.m. clean bathroom. Check medicine. It read like part of a routine schedule, and it was the last trace of that name before it vanished entirely. After Hackman withdrew from Hollywood, he lived an increasingly secluded life. Neighbors described the couple as quiet and peaceful, leaving home only when necessary. Until recently, people still saw Hackman driving himself, appearing healthy, while Betsy was remembered as cheerful and friendly. That normalcy began to change in early 2025. When the couple became noticeably more withdrawn, rarely appearing in public and avoiding interaction, the most haunting detail came from an anonymous neighbor quoted by the Santa Fe New Mexican. The neighbor recalled seeing Hackman sitting alone on his porch, staring intently into the surrounding woods, as if watching something no one else could see. When asked if everything was all right, Hackman only whispered, "Something's not right in this house." When the neighbor pressed further, he added, "Something is following us." Asked why he didn't call the police, Hackman replied quietly, "I don't know what it is." The confusion deepened as investigators focused on his wife's final hours. Santa Fe police reconstructed the timeline using security footage, transaction records, and mobile signal data. According to this reconstruction, Betsy Arakawa had taken one of their 3 dogs to a clinic, paying in cash and appearing visibly stressed. Cameras later recorded her visiting a farmer's market and stopping at a CVS before returning home at 5:15 p.m. on February 11. That timeline was later thrown into doubt. Dr. Josiah Child, who oversaw the Hackman's medical care, revealed information that directly contradicted police estimates. On the morning of February 12th, Betsy had called the clinic. Her voice, he said, was soft but clear and fully conscious. During the call, she scheduled a heart checkup for her husband, canceled it, and then scheduled an appointment for herself. She never arrived. According to Dr. Child, her voice showed no signs of fatigue or respiratory distress. This discrepancy became more troubling when investigators discovered that Betsy's phone showed no activity after 5:15 p.m. on February 11. That raised the possibility that someone else had impersonated her during the clinic call. Since her phone would have needed to be powered on, digital forensics later revealed traces of a device restart at 8:33 a.m., precisely when Betsy was supposedly at the clinic. Yet her phone was never recovered from the house. A report from the Santa Fe Police Department's Digital Forensics Unit concluded that Betsy's phone had remained completely powered off since the afternoon of February 11th. The only remaining evidence was an automated recording from the phone company confirming that the voice in the call resembled Betsy Arakawa's. The volume was low, the breathing faint, and the speech occasionally interrupted, almost as if it belonged to someone else. News of Gene Hackman's death shocked the world. For those who knew him personally, the tragedy carried an eerie sense of inevitability, as though it had been foreshadowed decades earlier. After marrying Betsy Arakawa in 1991, Hackman chose Santa Fe, New Mexico, as his retreat. He withdrew from public life, selected an isolated home, and refused interviews. Many believed he had found peace, but some close friends felt that Santa Fe was where he was hiding, That unease intensified when a 2004 appearance on Larry King Live resurfaced. When asked whether he feared death, Hackman smiled faintly and said he had the same fears as anyone else, especially with age. After a brief pause, his voice deepened as he added that he wanted his wife and family to be safe and taken care of. In hindsight, those words were seen as a grim premonition. The mystery surrounding the case also extended to Hackman's estate, valued at approximately $80 million. Although he had 3 children, his assets were placed in a private trust. When forensic teams left the Hackman residence, they sealed not only the autopsy files, but also dozens of legal documents, including a will drafted in 2005 in the living trust. The will named Betsy Arakawa as the sole beneficiary of Hackman's assets, including real estate, stocks, and film royalties. His 3 children from a previous marriage, Christopher, Elizabeth, and Leslie, were not mentioned. Betsy's death, however, created a critical legal loophole. Under inheritance law, a beneficiary must survive the testator by at least 90 days for the will to take effect. Betsy Arakawa was believed to have died on February 11th, while Gene Hackman passed away around February 18th, just 1 week later. As a result, the estate could not legally pass to his wife and was instead set to transfer into a charitable trust. Less than a week after the funeral, legal challenges began. Hackman's eldest son, Christopher, appeared in Santa Fe court with an estate attorney and successfully moved to temporarily suspend the transfer of assets to the charitable fund. Case evolved beyond a standard civil dispute into an indirect investigation. If Betsy's time of death were officially determined to be after February 12th, as Dr. Child suggested, the 90-day rule would be invalidated, and the $80 million estate would shift from an anonymous charitable trust to Hackman's 3 children, complicating matters further. The attorney designated as successor trustee, Michael G. Sutton, had died in 2019, leaving no clear authority to administer the trust. The unanswered questions surrounding the final days of Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa continued to ripple outward. Blurring the line between legal battle and unresolved mystery, the court was forced to step in, appointing the Avalon Trust Company to assume full control of the estate. All transactions were frozen, including bank accounts and access to Hackman's film royalties. As the family disputed ownership, creditors such as Citibank and Bank of America quickly filed claims, officially classifying the couple's assets as a contested estate, prompting the court to impose a complete financial lockdown. For investigators, the most unsettling detail was not the size of the fortune, but the timing. Why did the 2 deaths occur exactly 7 days apart, creating a narrow legal window that effectively invalidated the will? Hackman's $80 million estate now remains dormant, waiting a final ruling between his 3 estranged children and an anonymous, charitable trust. One final question continues to linger. Was it mere coincidence that the 2 graves lie only 90 steps apart in the same Santa Fe cemetery? Or was it a bitter reminder of the so-called survival clause that reshaped the fate of the estate? Before the court could reach a final decision, another shockwave struck, this time not from the courtroom, but from beyond Santa Fe itself, when the Santa Fe Police Department confirmed Gene Hackman's death on February 26, 2025. At the age of 95, the nation seemed to pause. The quiet disappearance of one of classic Hollywood's last legends found in isolation, surrounded by unanswered questions, triggered a media firestorm. At first, major outlets such as CNN, The Guardian, Variety, and Deadline Hollywood published respectful tributes, describing his passing as peaceful and natural. That tone shifted dramatically within hours. Once details surrounding his wife, Betsy Arakawa, began to surface. Tabloids and online outlets adopted colder, more cryptic headlines, while social media erupted with speculation. A Reddit thread titled "The Santa Fe Silence" amassed more than 200,000 shares, with users openly questioning whether Hackman's death was truly natural. One individual claiming to be a Santa Fe hospital technician posted a startling comment, alleging that the initial medical file had been revised twice before publication. Clips from Enemy of the State, the film in which Hackman portrayed a surveillance expert, resurfaced online alongside unsettling questions about whether he had been involved in an undisclosed incident. The Guardian labeled the case the strangest Hollywood mystery since Marilyn Monroe, while Rolling Stone described Santa Fe as a place where secrets never sleep. Television networks launched special investigative segments, dispatching reporters to interview neighbors, technicians, and even the delivery driver linked to the case. Within weeks, Hackman's public image shifted. He was no longer seen only as a legendary actor, but as a symbol of isolation and the hidden darkness behind fame. Vanity Fair wrote pointedly that Hackman may have left Hollywood, but Hollywood never truly left him. Online investigation channels and mystery podcasts dissected every detail, reconstructing the house's floor plan, analyzing alleged recordings of Betsy's final phone call, and scrutinizing every fragment of available evidence. The story grew beyond the life of a single star, becoming a reflection of Hollywood's shadowed side where fame, solitude, and secrets often coexist. Yet amid the noise, speculation, and unresolved questions, many began to look backward, not for new conspiracies, but for a clearer understanding of the man himself before the storm fully broke. Gene Hackman had already left the world behind. What remained was not only a body of iconic films, but a legacy defined by discipline, privacy, and an artistic philosophy that modern Hollywood still struggles to emulate. That legacy formed long before his final days. It's where the story truly begins. Gene Hackman was never the kind of star destined to be universally adored. He lacked the polished glamour of Cary Grant and the effortless warmth of Paul Newman. With his square face, sharp eyes, and curt manner traits, Hollywood once considered unsellable Hackman instead became an icon of honesty in an industry built on illusion. He did not act to be beautiful. He acted to be real, and that commitment to authenticity became his greatest legacy. Born in 1930 to poverty and emotional isolation in California, Hackman dropped out of school at 16 and joined the U.S. Marine Corps before drifting across the country in pursuit of acting. Once mocked by friends as someone who would never succeed, he went on to win 2 Academy Awards for Golden Globes and earn recognition as one of the greatest actors of the 20th century. What truly set Hackman apart was the brutal honesty of his performances. In The French Connection, 1971, his portrayal of Detective Popeye Doyle rejected the traditional heroic mold. The character was obsessive, abrasive, and deeply flawed. Hackman reshaped the image of the American police officer into something raw and unsettlingly human. The role earned him his first Oscar and permanently changed how Hollywood defined cinematic heroes. While many of his contemporaries pursued fame and commercial success, Hackman steadily withdrew from the spotlight. He declined awards parties, avoided interviews, and shunned talk shows. After Welcome to Mooseport in 2004, he quietly announced his retirement. As Hollywood moved into an era dominated by CGI spectacle and armored superheroes, his absence only elevated his stature. Hackman came to represent a generation of actors who relied solely on craft, not publicity. They needed no social media presence, no scandals, no carefully curated personas. Acting was not a branding exercise, but a way of life. When the camera stopped rolling, they returned to being ordinary human beings, not manufactured icons. He left Hollywood without farewell speeches, without a memoir, and without a tribute tour. That silence became his most powerful statement about art itself. His 1983 remark, "I act because I need to understand people, not for others to understand me," remains widely quoted by film students. His legacy lives not in awards, but in the courage to confront uncomfortable truths and reveal the darker corners of human nature. In an era obsessed with perfection, Hackman embraced characters who were rough, complex, and often unlikable, making them feel unmistakably real. After moving to Santa Fe with his wife, Betsy Arakawa, Hackman shed his identity as a movie star. He became a gardener, a writer of crime novels, and an ordinary older man. He authored 4 novels and lived quietly, far from the industry that had once defined him. In a rare interview in 2004, he said, "The price of fame is a loss of privacy. I've paid enough." Hackman understood early that Hollywood does not only destroy people through scandal, but by convincing them they must live forever in the spotlight. He chose to leave, and in doing so, became one of the last survivors of an authentic generation of actors. Today, filmmakers such as Christopher Nolan, Paul Thomas Anderson, and David Fincher cite Hackman as a model of uncompromising performance. His influence runs through modern cinema, not via blockbusters, but through an acting ethic that values truth over likability and character over approval. Gene Hackman's life and career ended without a grand memorial. Without a bronze statue, and without a film chronicling his life, what remains instead is something rarer, a body of work that never asked to be admired, only believed. Perhaps he never needed any of that, because he left behind something greater, a standard for how an artist might live. Speak little, act honestly, and step away before the lights turn you into a lie. Gene Hackman left no farewell. His passing felt instead like the quiet switching off of an old lamp, warm, steady, and never blinding. In a world obsessed with shine, his legacy rests in the shadows, where art returns to itself frail, rough, and deeply human. On his tombstone in Santa Fe, there are only two simple words, chosen in perfect harmony with his spirit. For Gene Hackman, an ending was not a loss, but a necessary part of the story. And perhaps when he left this world, Hollywood finally understood that not everyone needs to live forever in the light. Sometimes it is enough to leave behind a darkness deep enough for others to look into and recognize themselves. When Hackman was laid to rest in Santa Fe, his forensic file remained sealed. No one outside the investigation ever saw its full contents. His home, briefly listed for sale, was quietly withdrawn from the market, as if someone did not want strangers crossing its threshold. Those who once knew him said it felt as though he had never fully left, a metaphor, perhaps but one heavy with unease. Strangely, every winter the downstairs lights of the house are said to turn on, even though the electricity was cut long ago. No one has ever explained it, just as no one has explained why a man who once portrayed a surveillance expert and enemy of the state became the center of a mystery that seemed to watch him in return. Perhaps Hackman's final secret does not lie in an autopsy report, but in a question Hollywood has never truly dared to answer. Are legends ever allowed to pass away in peace? Hollywood was never simply a place of dreams. It is a machine fueled by illusion, where every tear is scheduled and every smile framed with precision. The lights do not illuminate people. They conceal what must remain unseen, the quiet agreements, the glittering lies, the souls worn thin in the race for immortality. In that world, people are not allowed to live freely. They are edited. Studios manufacture stars like products on an assembly line, shaping how they walk, how they smile, and even whom they are permitted to love. Marriages become publicity strategies. Divorces scripted events, and tears if shed on cue are transformed into legend. Beneath the posters and premieres, souls are lit until they burn out. Hollywood rarely destroys with violence. Instead, it erodes people slowly. Every role, every compliment, every round of applause takes something away. Some collapse quietly. Others learn to mask fear with a practiced smile and accept loneliness as the price of fame. The world still calls it the American dream, but if you listen closely, beneath the applause are sighs. Beneath the lights are empty eyes that have forgotten who they were and why they ever began to dream at all.